Last year I made a prediction, and in my prediction I said that Reform UK will be picking up steam in these coming years before the next election. And we see evidence of this from the local elections that have just happened, and Reform UK have been steaming ahead of other parties, especially the Labour Party. They're basically non-existent, which is a good thing. But the message is not going to be getting through to Keir Starmer. He's probably not going to be changing his policies much. But it's a good thing to see that people have woken up and they are not voting Labour. I'm very happy to see that. In this video, Matt Stadlen and Lowry Turner are going to be debating about why Reform have done so good. And Matt Stadlen's going to come and he's going to try and gaslight the people and talk about how, listen, Labour haven't been so bad. You know, they haven't removed the winter fuel payment for all pensioners. You know, they've been okay at times, and I don't even know how he can say that with a straight face. But anyway, guys, we're going to be watching it. Not long of an introduction. I'm going to be coming in with my points during the segment.
Are they winning it because there is a sort of a plague of both your houses from the British public? The Conservative Party seem to be falling apart. Labour are not very popular. Keir Starmer is not a popular reader. His personal ratings are minus double digits. Are Reform filling that gap because there are protest votes? Or do they have policies that people are saying, yeah, I like that. I like what they have to say. I'm going to give them my vote.
I think it's partly because the Tories were so resoundingly rejected at the last election 10 months ago. They've been in power for 14 years with a bit of Lib Demery at the start, and people felt they had failed. So Labour got in off the back of that, not particularly because people felt very strongly about a Labour government. They wanted to get rid of the Tories. Where are we now 10 months later? Well, as you say, we don't have a particularly popular Labour government. And that's partly through some, I think, unforced errors, like the winter fuel allowance being taken away from some pensioners. And I think that got them difficult headlines. But it's also because the country is in a bit of a mess. And that's partly because of 14 years of Tory rule, and it's partly for other reasons. I think things have been going largely downhill since the financial crisis of 2007, 2008. So whoever were in number 10, it would be very tricky. However, would Reform get my vote? Absolutely not. Why? They don't have the answers. It's perfectly possible that Farage could be our next Prime Minister if between them the Tories and Reform win the most seats and manage not to split the vote on the right as they did last year. And if Reform is the bigger of the two parties, Farage indeed could become our next Prime Minister, which until recently was unfathomable. But that doesn't mean things will get better. Things will not get better. I would argue they would get worse. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. Let's look at the National Health Service. Farage doesn't want that to be funded through general taxation. I think that would lead to a two-tier health system. I can give you other examples if you want.
The reform revolution is underway, despite attempts to demoralise the nation to accept decline, despite attempts to smear ordinary Brits as far right for just wanting fair play. You know, the burnt and betrayed British electorate are fighting back. And I just say, legends, you are all legends, reformers, with your unconquerable souls. And I'm so happy today. It feels like we've really got a mega foot in the door. And what I think is more concerning for the Labour and Conservative parties than just losing some council seats is hope. Last night will have inspired so much hope to the millions of Brits who have given up on voting because the two parties are both big tax, hypermass immigration, net zero, wokery, ECHR members. There was no other alternative, no option to represent those voices that haven't had a party to vote for that's viable. And that has all changed.
He has a question.
Yeah, Belinda, I mean, you talk a good game. You and I know each other, but this is all hot air. And let's look at some of what Andrea Jenkyns wants to be policy. She wants asylum seekers, people who are coming to this country because they want to escape dangerous regimes.
Or get a job.
She wants, and some of them are indeed illegal migrants, but some of them are, about half of them, I suspect.
I don't know.
But that's what the figures suggest. Half of them are asylum seekers. She wants them in tents. Now, that to me, and she also talks about British values, that to me does not smack of British values at all. And Richard Tice, your deputy leader, he keeps telling us that under a Reform government, you would be sending asylum seekers and illegal immigrants back to France. You'd be depositing them at French ports. He claims that that is legally possible. I can tell you, with a fact check, it is not. This is hot air,
Matthew,
and Reform don't have the answers.
Matthew, what the political liberal class find hysterically offensive. The majority of British people don't. We want someone to be plain talking. And France, and Andrea's not talking about all asylum seekers. She was mentioning the men coming from the safety of France, coming from a safe country, using British taxpayer money to fund their life here when France puts them into tents. So why don't we start looking at the option? It's a particular group, not, of course, genuine asylum seekers coming from other countries who come here, go through the due process. Secondly, we have incredible policies that are really attracting people. This is not a protest party.
Okay.
We have, your hot air, Matthew, about it just being a nothing with no answers. That stinks of fear.
Okay.
Fear because reform has a good chance of winning.
Okay.
We feel poorer. If you run a pub or a restaurant, you're struggling. I run a small business. It's really difficult out there. We don't feel, particularly small business owners, that we got any help from the government, quite the reverse. If you live in an area outside London, if you live somewhere where they love green and pleasant land, and you're seeing a solar farm being plonked in the middle of your valley, or you're seeing a housing estate, despite local opposition, being plonked near you, we feel that our lives have been made worse by the Labour government, not better. And I think that's what reform are playing into.
Let me get back to Sue. So, Sue, did you vote for reform yesterday? You said you've been a lifelong Conservative voter. You'd never vote Labour. Did you vote for reform?
Yeah, and I did, yes.
And do you feel hopeful with the new MP? Do you think your life is going to change?
I just think give somebody a chance. Because, yeah, and he's fresh.
But it matters who you decide to give a chance. I get the frustration. I certainly get the frustration with the Tories, and I've already acknowledged that this Labour government isn't very popular so far, partly through their own unforced errors. But you say give someone a chance. Who are you giving a chance to? Someone who is selling you a story that is not going to work out in your favour. And we will find out quite possibly, because, as I say, it is possible that Farage becomes Prime Minister.
But if Cooper sold us her story, she was going to smash the gangs. Well, we've got record numbers of people coming to the UK. So every party sells a story. The problem is that the Labour Party said we're going to have a growing economy. Well, that's not a lie. We're going to stop smashing gangs.
It's not a lie. It's not a lie. It just hasn't happened yet. No, hang on.
Okay.
No, they say they're going to try and grow the economy. It doesn't mean that it's going to be done.
It was a budget for growth. It's clearly not a budget for growth because we're not growing.
There's a difference between intending something that doesn't happen and lying. I think that's an important distinction.
All right.
Come on. Labour government have been lying through their teeth. Remember Keir Starmer? We're not going to increase your council tax by a penny. It stays the same. And then what happens? Council tax goes up. Rachel Reeves as well was here. She was at the top of her lungs championing that there will be growth. The budget will deliver growth. No, she's just delivered more taxation on the working class, and there has been absolutely no growth. This Labour government have been lying through their teeth. And the fact that Matt is saying this, he's part of the problem as to why a lot of Labour and Conservative voters have gone to reform, because they just want reform. They're tired, they don't care. He's saying, who do we give a chance to? They don't mind giving Farage a chance, because they've given the Tories a chance, they've given Labour a chance. It's the same old thing. So why not someone new? That's how they're thinking.
Sue, thank you for kicking us off. Let's speak to Carla, who's in Gloucestershire. Carla, have reform won you over?
Oh, goodness, no, not a chance in a million. And I agree with Matthew, although I'm actually a Liberal.
Right.
So I would love something like Mark Carney to be leading the country. But
He's busy being the Canadian Prime Minister at the moment, so he's got his hands full. But why reform not winning you over?
Oh, gosh. Well, for a start, you see, the thing is that they're hot air. And it's not just that. It's very easy for Nigel Farage to whip people up into a frenzy. He's very good at doing that, but very little else. And can you honestly, look at him as an MP for his local constituents. I mean, honestly. And then you've got two members of the party who've defected to go and live in Dubai because they don't want to pay taxes. It's actually a compliment to pay taxes in the country that you're living in, because taxes actually help us.
Why do you think that we've seen reform become as popular? They won Sue over. Larry's saying that Labour are failing to make people feel better off, even though they may be able to say, as Matthew was pointing out, we've reduced waiting lists, we've increased people's minimum wage, but people are not feeling it.
No, I agree, because you see, it's very difficult to find a clarity. And I think whilst Labour have done some very good things, the sad thing is that it's shocked people about their policy, to target vulnerable people on
the winter
PIP.
fuel allowance. Yep.
Yes, and so I think PIP is a different thing. I think it just allows somebody to have a life when they're clinging on to life as it is, because they're trying to desperately get up if they're disabled.
Yeah.
To take that away from people, I mean, that really, they're often desperate. And that's what shocks me about Labour. But you see, I'm liberal, so
yeah.
Everybody scoffs at me usually. They
no one's
laugh
scoffing at you here.
I care about English people, Leslie. I go to every single England rugby, cricket, football game that I can manage to afford to go to. I'm a passionate English person. This idea that you don't care about English people if at the same time you don't want to treat people coming over from France in those boats with total contempt, that is for the birds. It just doesn't add up. Part of what it is to be an English person or a British person is to care about the vulnerable. And of course we should care about the British vulnerable. But that doesn't mean that we have to put people in tents. I think politicians, I've never put myself up for election. I have so much respect for people who do, whatever party they come from. Politicians spend almost every minute of every day trying their hardest to make things better according to what they think would make the country better. We have to have some degree of respect for what they do. They work unbelievably hard. They might get it wrong, but it's a hard challenge.
But this Labour government doesn't seem to be listening. So, for example, we've seen all the protests from the farmers, and the Labour government have not listened at all. There's a very
inheritance tax.
Well, there's a very, I think, understandable view that this Labour government is only interested in urban areas, and particularly in urban areas with high immigrant populations. That is the view if you go outside London. Okay. And the problem I have is when
You know what, I'd even say urban areas, high immigrant population, but not so much even Christians, more so Muslims. It's not really like Christians still get arrested for preaching the gospel on the side of the street or for praying in their head. So it's really just the Muslim population. That's who they're really trying to cater to. Let's just be super, super honest here. And the people coming in, most of them coming from the Middle East. It's just the truth. So it's more so Muslims and, people coming from the Middle East that are getting this preferential treatment from this Labour government.
On this show I do with a lot of people who spend all their time apparently in London and don't actually go out and see what it feels like not to be part of that metropolitan area.
That brings about the end of the video today. Just one quick point before I close out the segment, and that is, we've seen so much content on social media go viral in relation to immigrants coming into Europe, and it's changing, let's just be honest. It's fine. Let's just have the honest conversation. Europe is changing. I don't know what's going on. It's happening in even Austria, Germany. I was covering, there was a lot of jihadi attacks. And then in Sweden, they killed a guy that was not agreeing with, Islam. And then it happened in America. And then in Conor McGregor's talking about an island. And then Britain's going crazy. So there's a lot going on. And the native people of these countries are going to have concerns. You can't just do this and expect them to be fine with it. They're going to have their concerns, and you should jot that down. And it needs to, you need to act on that. You can't just label them, you're racist, you're far right. No. They've seen their mothers and their grandparents grow up in, their fathers, grandparents grow up in this country. It's been a certain way, and all of a sudden, boom, within a couple of years, it's just changed, 180. And they're like, whoa, what's really going on here? And if it was to happen in Africa, if it was to happen in the Middle East, if it was to happen anywhere, they would ask questions as well and say, what's going on? We didn't sign up for this. So it's just how we would behave as human beings. But anyway, guys, that's enough from me. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you at the next video. Peace.